Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels. We are going back to that horrible world known as the JRC, but before we do the usual disclaimers, if you are unfamiliar with the Stop the Shocks campaign or the campaign against the troubled teen industry, you're going to find all the pertinent links right there in the description box. Please, in particular, take note of the article written by NeuroClastic, a small non for profit started by autistics for autistics. In it, they interviewed over 900 ABA professionals in regards to the JRC's so called behavior modification program. The Judge Rotenberg Educational Center doesn't want you to read that article so much. They threatened NeuroClastic with a defamation lawsuit if they did not remove it from the website. Well, folks, NeuroClastic has refused. You know the drill. Please read the article. Share it on all your social media. Also included in there is NeuroClastic's public statement regards to the defamation lawsuit threat, as well as a link to their GoFundMe. We are crowdfunding just in case the JRC actually sees through with their threat. Trigger warning 1: when we discuss places like the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center and Agape Boarding School for Boys, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of and catch clips or surveillance footage of people with mental health issues and disabled people being tortured and abused. If you got young children present, please make sure to go ahead and use your headphones. Trigger warning 2: this channel is marked not for kids for a reason. We use profanity on occasion and we do speak on dark subjects. If your child is 16 and younger and they are watching this, very obviously parental supervision is very much advised, all right? Okay, folks, so where we left off last time, to the response to this paper from 1969, Jesus. The FDA acknowledges the apparent printing error and the omission of Dr. Israel's disclosure in the 2008 paper. How convenient. The other readers may have been adequately notified of any potential bias. Yet, however, as we explained in the proposed rule, the FDA was aware of the affiliation and took into account the possible conflicts of interest, which stem from the facts that Dr. Israel was the founder of JIC, and the time his papers were published was on the journal's editorial board, and thus part of the reviewing and approving body for his own papers. Jesus fucking Christ, if I didn't think it was biased before. But it was brought before an editorial board. His editorial board, made up of doctors who have their paychecks signed by him. You not seeing the problem here? That's not a peer review that is actually real. You don't get to create your own peer review panel. The whole point of a peer review panel is to be reviewed by your peers who are not connected to you. In order for science to flourish, objectivity must be retained at all costs. Okay? So, you literally being the journal's editorial board head for the JRC publishing doesn't help your argument, it makes it worse. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether Dr. Israel disclosed that he was the head of the JRC or not. The fact that he was a head of the fucking board was not disclosed. I didn't know that until just now. The point is, the doctors he put on that board, his so called peer review panel, were handpicked by him to see what he tells them to see. That's the problem. Okay? As such, this printing error does not affect our conclusion with respect to Dr. Israel's potential bias. I would call it inherent bias. It's his ass on the line. And we're accepting his papers. I'm right, and this paper says I'm right. And so does this peer review panel, whose members I handpicked and whose checks I sign. Confirmation bias much? True objectivity can only be obtained with a peer review gathered together of your peers that are in no way affiliated with you. There's no dog in the fight, there's no room for potential bias. And the scrutiny that individuals go under before they are approved to become a part of said panel is something that Dr. Israel was never forced to do. Okay? So, what the FDA is saying, this printing error changes jack shit. He was still the head of the board that did that so called peer review, made up of doctors and nurse practitioners whose paychecks he signs. This is not peer review. There is no objectivity from such a panel. Okay? These people are literally reliant on this man for their way of living. Of course, they're going to agree with whatever the fuck he says. That's a no brainer. Their livelihoods are on the line. Can we use our brains, please, for the love of God? As we stated in the proposed rule, possible conflicts of interest do not, on their own, invalidate results. However, we continue to view Dr. Israel as a potentially biased source and weigh this evidence accordingly. There's an elephant in the room that's not being addressed by this final rule. That elephant in the room is at this time period, Dr. Israel had already been convicted with evidence tampering and doctoring shit. He's already been caught doing these things. In fact, because of those things, he entered in a plea deal to avoid jail, to leave and have nothing further to do with the JRC. The problem is that Dr. Israel started it, but he trained his acolytes too well. And they're just like him and of the same mindset. Okay? Fact of matter is, how can you trust a man's papers who's been convicted of tampering with evidence during an ongoing criminal investigation? You can't. And I'd like to know why that's not being addressed, especially when we're talking about credibility here. As we stated in the proposed rule, possible conflicts of interest do exist. They don't negate or invalidate the results. It fucking should. Okay? If anyone believes that Dr. Israel was completely objective while doing the clinical studies that he presented, then I've got beach property in Kansas I can sell you. There's even a unicorn on the grounds. Okay? It's that obnoxiously stupid. All right? And I know that makes this one short and sweet, but we're going to go ahead and close out on this, folks. We don't get very many views on this channel. The few we do get do tend to get removed from time to time, so you know the drill. Please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and don't forget to utilize those comments. I appreciate your time. As always, folks, we here at Spilling Tea hope you have a good one. I'll see you again in a few minutes. Bye-bye, everyone.